A very good evening to you and welcome back here on Checkpoint. We are delighted to have your company with us this evening. As mentioned a little bit earlier before we took a break, this evening our focus is on county government. A lot of developments in the recent past. We want to get into them this evening and we're inviting your feedback. You can be part of this conversation. The hashtag to use is Checkpoint. I will be able to sample your thoughts this evening. Joining me here in studio is the Senator Homa Bay County. He's also the chairperson of the Senate's Committee on Public Accounts and Investment. So oversight over county government and as far as the financials and how your money and taxes are being managed. He's the man in charge of that team. And joining us from Mumias, we have the governor, Kakamega County. He is the chairperson of the Council of Governors, Wycliffe Oparanya. We thank you, sir, for being with us as well this evening here on Checkpoint. I'll begin with you, Senator. Thank you as well for being here. On the audit queries, and many Kenyans have been following, we've seen the various governors coming before your committee and fielding questions on the expenditure and the questions as well that the Auditor General has raised concerns on how money was spent. But of course, one of those glaring issues was the anomalies, quote unquote, when listed expenditure emerged on issues like state house affairs, foreign affairs sort of situations that are all clearly under the national government. But just to set the record straight as we begin, this was not part of the Auditor General's report. The Auditor General was not questioning that the county governments were spending taxpayers' money on state house and state affairs. Is that correct?
Well, thank you, Sophia. Allow me, before I respond specifically to what you have raised, to say two things. One, to congratulate Gor Mahia for beating AFC. I passed by there because we need to promote sports. Number two, to condemn what is happening in Kisumu. Earlier in the day, I went to see Senator Malala, and I've really been surprised to see tear gas being lobbed into a police station. Policemen, the people we've seen on TV, those are policemen. I was with them earlier on. They are cleaning their faces. Police is tear gassing police. It is so wrong. I hope that matter will be resolved. Let me get back to the issue of county government expenditure. When we look at the Auditor General's report, we look at it alongside the financial statements, because it is an audit of the financial statements of a county government. So whether the Auditor General raised a query or not, we have a responsibility to look at the accompanying financial statements. And in the case of Kiambu, where we had all these bizarre expenditure, it is surprising that the county government of Kiambu, having had 365 days to spend money, could not figure out that they had a wrong schedule on budget. That the Auditor General, having been on the ground for 6 months, could not figure out that there was something wrong about the budget schedule. And it took Senate just 1 hour to find that there was something wrong. The beauty about this is not just about apportioning blame or saying that Kiambu is doing crazy things. It brings into focus a conversation on the financial systems or the information systems that we have in this country to manage financials, not just at the county level, but at the national level. It would appear that IFMIS, the system that is being used to manage financial transactions in this country, there's a lot that needs to be done on it. And I am glad that it took the Senate to expose the weaknesses in IFMIS. And those weaknesses, if they cannot be explained, then Kenyans would believe that these governors stole the money.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that, because it is also important to set the record straight on whether money was actually lost, so that we've had the different responses from the governors who appeared before you. But let me take this and bring it to you, Governor Oparanya. Isn't it a clear case of incompetence when a governor appears before the committee that is a public accounts and is not aware of documents they themselves are presenting before this committee? How do you not know what you're even bringing to defend?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm happy to note that the Senator Kajwang, who is the chair of the of the Public Investment Committee, Finance and Investment Committee at the Senate is there. And it is good that he has brought up this issue, that the problem appeared in these accounts. Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me? There is a lot of noise at the back.
Yes, the director has noted that. Go ahead.
Yeah, are you now okay? Can I go ahead?
Yes, go ahead. We can hear you loud and clear,
It is good
Governor.
that Senator Kajwang noted that the problem is infamous. And let me tell you that the problem we have in all the accounting is infamous. And this issue has been raised very severally. And in fact, the Auditor General carried out a review of the infamous system, and he came up with quite a number of recommendations, and he recommended that the infamous system needs to be relooked at afresh. This has not happened. Now, to blame the governor of Kiambu that he came without knowing that there were errors, first of all, as counties, we present accounts to the Auditor General. The Auditor General, as expected of him, he will carry out the audit, and then he will come up to raise issues that he feels they are shortcoming within those audits. In this case, the Auditor General never raised any issue.
So let me jump in there.
Particular issues.
Let me jump in there, Governor, because you're right
yes.
to say that the Auditor General did not raise issues on those anomalies. But even as the Senator stated, these were documents that
yes.
the county governors, the one next chairs, that the county governors brought alongside. So my question is that a CEO of a county would come to defend how they've spent public money and come with documentation to show how that expenditure was distributed and not know what it contains, and yet they had those figures. So who's running the counties, Governor? That's a legitimate concern and question.
Remember, the governor is not an accounting officer.
But he's the
accounting
CEO of the county.
Is the CEC.
The people elect the governor, not the CEC.
But yeah, then that was unfortunate on the part of the CEC Finance not to raise that issue to the governor that there were errors in the accounts. But the major surprising issue, I can tell you, that when we appear before the Senate, we are looking at the queries raised by the Auditor General. Okay. And that is where we concentrate, and that is what we focus on when we appear before the Senate. And even if you look at what the Auditor General is supposed to do, is supposed to carry out an audit and give a report. And it is that report that we look at. And this issue were not in that report that the Auditor General raised. So I don't think that the governor of Kiambu can be blamed for not looking at schedules.
All right,
when
sir.
There was already an audit report that was the focus of the meeting.
So I think your point has been made concerning that, yes, it was the auditor's report, then the queries therein. But what I'm still concerned, and I'm not answered yet, and your county is one of those that was affected, that you would bring documents and say it's the county executive who is not really where in as far as the people elected mandate and trust of office is in. It's with the governor. So let me bring it back to the Senator. Are you convinced with what you're hearing from Governor Oparanya? Because you've managed to hear from the various governors appearing before you. We will get to the question of IFMIS, but does that convince you that CECs are the ones getting us into these problems and governors is not where the buck stops, pretty much, is what he's saying?
Well, I have a lot of respect for Governor Oparanya.
Yes.
Because of his track record. I have a lot of respect for Governor Oparanya because he understands the audit exercise.
Right.
Himself is an expert in this particular matter. And he knows that when the Auditor General looks at financial statements, he renders an opinion on financial statements. When the opinion comes to the Senate, we cannot look at the opinion at the exclusion of the financial statement.
Right.
It is in those financial statements that the bizarre expenditures were contained. Despite my respect for Governor Oparanya, I do not agree with him on one thing. This assertion that accounting officers are CECs and CEOs is fallacious. The only elected person in this country who is described as a chief executive officer is the governor. It's not even the president. The president is described as the head of state and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The senator is a legislator and a noisemaker. The only chief executive officer recognized in the Constitution is the governor. And even though the PFM Act or other statute designate different people to be accounting officers, the ultimate accounting officer in a county is a chief executive officer who is the governor. On the issue of coming before Senate with a financial statement that is inaccurate, it is a governor who takes full responsibility. And interestingly, of all the counties that were involved in this bizarre reporting, Kakamega was one of them. I would have expected the governor of Kakamega, or the governor of Kiambu, or the governor of Kirinyaga, or any other county, before these financial statements are submitted to the Auditor General, they would sit down with their CEC finance and look at it from page 1 to the last page and make sure that it is accurate reports that are being sent to the Auditor General and subsequently to the Senate and to the county assemblies. The crisis is this. The people of Kiambu are not sure whether the 2 billion was spent on Kiambu. They believe that that money could have been pilfered, and so people are looking for excuses to justify how it was spent.
So was money lost is what, as you said, many people are concerned. So we had 2 billion here, allocation to South Sudan, peace affairs and all that. So was money lost in that it was misreported and misrepresented? Because
we've asked the Auditor General to do a special audit,
right.
I wouldn't want to render a verdict at this point in time. But the manner in which the financial statements were presented to us, it is not adequate for us to confirm that the 2 billion in the case of Kiambu was spent properly. And 2 billion, Sophia, is not small money.
Correct.
2 billion can do a lot of things. You look at Kiambu, it is an economy that depends so much on trade, industry, depends so much on agriculture. If 2 billion was put in just revitalizing the markets or even the health sector, it would make a significant difference in the lives of the people in Kiambu.
Right.
So I don't want to say, to trivialize it and say that 2 million was a typing error, you know, the way Uhuru said when he was Minister for Finance.
Okay.
It cannot be explained as a typing error.
Yeah.
What the governor of Kiambu should tell us, and other governors, including Governor Oparanya, my friend who's also on set, is that if 2 billion was not spent on free primary education, on South Sudan, on retired president's benefits, what was it spent on? Show us 2 billion spent on a market in Kiambu, on a ECD in Kiambu, just break it down for us.
So,
that will be a better explanation rather than blaming everybody else.
Right. So, Governor, before we talk about IFMIS, and your counterpart in Kirinyaga has called for the resignation of the IFMIS director, the money that was, in your view, misreported in terms of your budget, what was it spent on is what residents, I believe, in your county would want to know, if at all it was spent.
Sophie, let me explain this. You know, there is a proper, a thorough process of preparing the budget.
Correct.
Before we even take any expenditure in a budget, we have to do public participation. And then we capture what the people will require. We cost that, we put it together and then submit this budget to the county assembly. The county assembly will pass that budget with amendment or without amendment. Then that budget will then be approved, signed by the governor. And then it will be forwarded to the treasury, a copy, and the IFMIS, so that the expenditure items are uploaded on the IFMIS. But before that happens, that budget has to be looked at by the controller of budget to confirm that the county budget is in conformity with the functions of the county. Now, this was done. At that moment, none of this process captured that there were figures there that were not desired to be there. At the same time, these figures after expenditure, they were presented to the Auditor General. And the Auditor General never raised an issue that there were expenditure within these accounts that were not desired for counties, but they were for the national government. Then how do you come and say that now the county governments have to explain this when there was a proper process, that nothing was captured in that particular process?
Then let me ask you this, Governor.
But it is now at the last minute figure, yes.
Let me ask you this. What do you say to what
Yes.
I understand is a memo that has been sent by Treasury saying that it is in fact the CECs in these counties that have been using the wrong template, using the national government template, hence this mix-up and situation we find ourselves in. Do you buy that explanation?
But who owns that particular system? You know, you surprise me when someone says there are wrong patterns and there are right patterns. Who owns this system? It is the same treasury. So if there is any problem, it is them to blame. If there is our CEC making a mistake, it is them to make sure they train this CEC so that they do the right thing. This system does not sit in Kakamega, it does not sit in Kiambu, it is in Nairobi. So mistakes done by this system, how would you say you want to blame counties?
All right, let me bring it to the Senator, and as we talk about the same point. So then, Governor Waiguru wrote in demanding an apology, because it's one of the counties implicated in this, says that the director of IFMIS should resign. Do you agree with the governor?
Well, Sophia, before I come back to the issue of Governor Waiguru, because she was the architect of IFMIS, it's public knowledge. Let me first deal with an issue that has been raised by chairman of COG on the process through which budgets are passed. And I agree with him that there is a very rigorous process where the assembly is involved and various constitutional bodies are involved. But there are two things. There is budget planning and there's budget execution. You can plan that you're going to spend on ABCD.
Correct.
But what we look at is not the plan. What we look at is how you executed that budget.
Correct.
And so when counties, I think in the financial statements it's 5.7, it's section 5.7, the financial statements. When a county reports back to the Auditor General and to the Senate that 2 billion shillings was used on South Sudan, free primary education, etc., etc., that is what we consider, not the plan, but the execution. Because you can plan and go through all those processes and then execute differently. I think what we need to deal with is these 2 billion in the case of Kiambu, and whatever amounts are involved in Kakamega or Kirinyaga or any other counties. If it was not used for South Sudan and for free primary education, why can't the governors tell us what it was used for? Instead of blaming everybody, instead of blaming IFMIS, instead of blaming Senate, instead of blaming the national government, instead of blaming everybody else except themselves. On the issue of IFMIS, I do acknowledge that we have significant issues with that system. Indeed, when Governor Waiguru came before the Senate, and I directly put that question to her, whether she believed that IFMIS was fit for purpose to support operations of county governments. But because she was the architect of IFMIS, she said that IFMIS as a system is excellent, it works well. And she thought that the problem were the users. I believe that the problem is not necessarily the users. There are cases where IFMIS as a system, certain modules have not been turned on, and it is not fit to enable county governments and national government to do financial transactions in a transparent manner. And this is an issue that I would wish to ask Chairman Oparanya, that let us have a tripartite meeting where the Council of Governors, the National Treasury, and the Senate are sitting down together so that we figure out the architecture of the system that can deliver value. Because IFMIS was established when we had one government.
Yeah.
Now we have 47 governments plus one government. We need to ensure that IFMIS responds to the needs of the devolved units. But before we get into that intellectual discussion, could you tell us, if you didn't spend money in South Sudan, if you didn't spend money in free primary education, what did you spend it on? That is what Kenyans are asking for.
Exactly, a very important clarification that we need, but we are going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk just a little bit more about that, and of course the other concerns on finances and money location to counties. Is that stalemate that's going on between the two houses of government, and just how much should be going to the county governments? Will it lead to a grind in operations if they do not agree soonest? We'll wait to hear. We also have Governor Oparanya there with us. So for our viewers on KTN Home, that's all for us. You'll have sports news with Robinson or Kenya. We'll see you next time, but you can flip over to KTN News where this conversation continues in a short while.